door didn't slam, it creaked. And in that quiet sound lived everything that had gone wrong, because behind it were children who had been taught that pain was love, that silence was obedience, and that the person hurting them was the one sent to save them. Jodi Hildebrandt did not look like a monster. She looked like help, a licensed therapist, a trusted counselor, a woman who spoke calmly about truth, accountability, and correction. And desperate parents believed her because she understood something terrifyingly simple. Control the narrative, and you control the pain. Inside her world, compassion became punishment, food became a privilege, water became a lesson, isolation became reflection, and every act of cruelty was delivered not with anger, but with certainty, convincing children that their suffering proved they were broken, and that obedience was the only path to worth. The cruel irony was that the systems meant to protect them, therapy, authority, trust, were the very tools being used to hurt them. And as the children weakened, Jodi's power grew. Because silence is easiest to enforce when victims believe they deserve what is happening to them. To the outside world, she spoke of healing families, while inside those families quietly collapsed, until cracks finally formed when a neighbor noticed, when a child escaped, when the truth could no longer be hidden behind calm words and professional titles. When authorities arrived, they did not find a misunderstood healer. They found evidence, they found injuries, they found children conditioned to believe rescue was punishment. And in that moment, the power shifted, not with shouting or revenge, but with facts. Jodi Hildebrandt, once so certain and commanding, sat silent as her own teachings were exposed as control and abuse disguised as righteousness. And for the first time, the children were believed. Justice did not roar, it arrived quietly, stripping away her authority, revoking her power, and redefining her legacy not by what she claimed to teach, but by the harm she caused, while the children were no longer lessons to be broken, but survivors to be protected. This story is not just about one woman. It is a warning about what happens when authority goes unquestioned, and cruelty is justified as care. Because true evil does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers, "This is for your own good," and the lesson is clear and costly. Never surrender your conscience to anyone who demands obedience over compassion. Because when truth finally replaces fear and the powerless are heard, justice stands, and this time the children were saved. After the arrest, the silence Jodi Hildebrandt once enforced began to break, and the most unsettling truth emerged not from court transcripts, but from the voices that had been suppressed for so long. Children started to speak, halting at first, describing days measured by hunger and fear, nights shaped by isolation, and a constant message drilled into them that pain was proof of progress. And with every testimony, the image of control she crafted unraveled further. The dramatic irony deepened as experts explained that the same psychological language Jodi used to justify punishment was textbook manipulation, not therapy, revealing that what she called accountability was actually domination. Former supporters watched in disbelief as the woman they trusted was redefined by evidence, while survivors slowly learned a truth far more difficult to accept than guilt. None of it had been their fault. The power shift was complete when the courtroom no longer centered on Jodi's voice, but on the damage left behind, forcing the system itself to confront how easily credentials can mask cruelty. Healing did not arrive instantly because justice may close a chapter, but recovery takes time. Yet for the first time, those children were allowed food without earning it, rest without permission, and safety without conditions. The final weight of this story rests in its warning and its hope that vigilance matters, that authority must always be questioned when compassion disappears, and that even after profound harm, truth has the power to return dignity to those who were denied it, proving that real justice is not just punishment of the guilty, but the restoration of the innocent. Long after the headlines faded, the aftermath told the most important story. Because justice did not end with a sentence, it began with rebuilding lives that had been shaped by fear. The children carried invisible scars, flinching at raised voices, doubting kindness, struggling to trust comfort, because it once came with conditions. Yet slowly, through consistent care and patience, they learned that safety did not have to be earned, and love did not require suffering. The final irony settled in quietly, as Jodi Hildebrandt, who once dictated reality to others, became defined by records and consequences she could no longer control, while the children she tried to break reclaimed identities beyond victimhood. Society was forced to look inward, to question how authority, religion, and therapy can become weapons when accountability disappears, and how easily well-spoken cruelty can hide behind professional language. The lasting lesson of this case is not just that abuse can wear a gentle face, but that listening to those without power is the first line of defense against it, because silence is what allows harm to grow. In the end, justice was not only served in a courtroom, it lived on in the quiet moments where fear loosened its grip, where laughter returned without permission, and where the children, once controlled by lies, stepped forward into lives defined not by what was done to them, but by what they survived and overcame. With time, the story of Jodi Hildebrandt stopped being only about her crimes and became a mirror held up to the public, exposing how easily certainty can be mistaken for wisdom and control for care. Institutions reviewed policies, licenses were questioned, and uncomfortable conversations began about how many warning signs had been ignored because authority sounded confident and punishment was framed as virtue. The children continued their slow climb toward normalcy, learning that mistakes did not require pain, that obedience was not the same as goodness, and that their voices mattered even when they trembled. The deepest power shift revealed itself not in legal documents, but in growth, as those once silenced learned to speak without fear, while the woman who demanded absolute obedience faded into a cautionary footnote of history. The final truth of this case is simple and haunting. When cruelty is justified as love, it thrives in secrecy. But when truth is spoken and believed, it dismantles even the most carefully constructed control, leaving behind a lesson written in lives reclaimed rather than lives broken. In the years that followed, the quiet resilience of the survivors became the truest measure of justice. Because while Jodi Hildebrandt's name remained tied to abuse and betrayal, the children's names became tied to recovery and strength. They learned to set boundaries where obedience once ruled, to question authority where fear once silenced them, and to recognize that real guidance never demands suffering as proof of worth. The community, once shaken by disbelief and shame, slowly absorbed the hard lesson that protection requires vigilance, not blind trust, and that expertise without empathy is dangerous. What endures from this case is not the power Jodi once held, but the reminder that healing begins when truth is allowed to breathe, and that justice is fully served not when a predator falls, but when those harmed rise, carrying forward a future no longer defined by control, but by choice. As the story finally settled into history, one truth remained impossible to ignore. The greatest damage Jodi Hildebrandt caused was not only the suffering she inflicted, but the trust she shattered. Trust in professionals, in systems, in the idea that authority automatically means safety. 5. Rebuilding that trust became the final quiet battle for the survivors, as they learned that skepticism could coexist with hope, and that questioning power was not disobedience, but self-protection. The last irony lingered in the background, that the woman who preached control left behind chaos, while the children she tried to dominate became living proof that strength does not come from punishment. It comes from being believed. And so this case ends not with her name, but with theirs, with voices once silenced now steady, carrying forward a lesson written in pain but redeemed by justice. When truth is heard and compassion is restored, even the deepest harm can lose its power. In the final reflection, this case stands as a warning etched into collective memory. A reminder that evil does not always arrive as chaos, but often as confidence wrapped in credentials and certainty. The children, once reduced to tools in someone else's ideology, became the undeniable proof that control can never create character and fear can never create virtue. Their survival reshaped the meaning of justice, showing that accountability is not just about removing power from the abuser, but about restoring humanity to those who were denied it. What lingers is not the image of a fallen authority figure, but the enduring truth that listening saves lives, questioning protects the vulnerable, and compassion must always outweigh obedience. In the end, justice was fully served not because one woman lost everything, but because the children gained something far greater: their voices, their freedom, and the chance to grow without fear, ensuring that the silence which once protected abuse will never be allowed to return.